Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura and today we are gonna do a recipe in the crock pot with one of my favorite cuts of beef. It's probably the most versatile, it's extremely budget friendly, and that is the chuck roast. Chuck roasts are on sale this week in my area for $5.99 a pound, which as a side note, I feel like back in the day, you could get chuck roast on sale for $3.99 a pound just a few years ago, but $5.99 a pound these days is a pretty good deal. So I grabbed 2 chuck roasts. I am going to turn this into some steaks and I'm gonna cook the rest of it in a crock pot to do some meal prep for the week. This is obviously gonna be carnivore friendly, but you could add some things to go along with it if you have a variety of eaters in your house. So this is like one of my go-tos for meal prepping for the week. And if you wanna get some like perfect, delicious like ribeyes, poor man's ribeyes, for $5.99 a pound, then you're gonna grab these chuck roast as well. Also, stay tuned till the end because I'm gonna show you not only how we're gonna eat this for a meal today, but then what I'm gonna do with the leftovers to make them a little more interesting as we eat throughout the week. The most important step in maximizing your bang for your buck with a chuck roast is the first step, and that's picking out the right one from the case. So I was at the grocery store, there's a huge pile of chuck roast in it, and you're gonna see a lot that look like this, the top version, and you're gonna see a lot that look like this bottom one. Now, I instantly grabbed this bottom one and looked for as many as I could find that looked like this. And if you're unsure why I would never purchase the one that looks on the top, then let me break it down for you. This video is sponsored by Element. Element is the electrolyte drink mix that I drink every day still, even after all these years. And that's because think about the water that we drink. Our water is so overly filtered and so overly processed. It's not like we're drinking this natural spring water that our ancestors used to drink that was full of like minerals and all kinds of good stuff from the ground. We are drinking water that is stripped out of all its good minerals and sodium. And so I want to add back in these natural electrolytes, the sodium, the magnesium, and the potassium. They have an unflavored version that's literally, those are the only 3 ingredients. They have no sweeteners of any kind. And you could just throw one in your water, go about your day, and it's gonna keep you really hydrated and you're not gonna experience any of those symptoms of low sodium. They also have a lot of flavored versions that are sweetened with stevia. Our family's favorite is the lemonade salt. It's just so nice and refreshing. It's like this perfect, light, crisp lemonade, and so you can like mix it and do so many fun things with it as well. Element has a deal for all my subscribers where you can get a free sample pack with any purchase, and they're gonna give you 8 sticks for free, and you can try out 4 of their different flavors or share some with friends, but you can go to drinkelement.com/LAURASPATH. They also have a 100% money back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Thanks to Element for sponsoring this video. Okay, first and foremost, what you can see here are 2 very distinct pieces. So there is this nice line of fat that goes through it, and this piece down here is going to be your chuck eye. That is basically the next steak in line when they cut off all the ribeyes. So that's why a chuck eye is called the poor man's ribeye, because basically it's one steak away from being a ribeye, and it's gonna be really tender and you can eat it just like a ribeye. This top part then is gonna be the Denver steak. And so I'm literally going to, on both of these, separate this bottom piece off. We're gonna eat that like a steak, and then this top part is the one that we are gonna put in the crock pot. These actually are gonna separate so easily. Look at this, you can just like literally pull it apart. Maybe I use my knife just to like give it a little separation, but then look at this. I now have a delicious ribeye, essentially, right? It's the chuck eye steak, but this is gonna give me an amazing steak that I can cook on the grill, in the cast iron, in the air fryer, and I'm able to get like a ribeye quality steak for $5.99 a pound. If this was thicker, sometimes chuck roast are really thick, or if you just don't eat a lot in one sitting, you could cut this in half again this way and make it 2 thinner steaks. And look at this, like it has a good amount of fat on it. I also am going to be looking for good marbling. You don't want necessarily like a big red blob and you don't really know where the muscles separate. You look at this one. So we see these like, there's clearly no piece compared to how this one is. You can clearly tell the separation in the two. And there's also not very good marbling here. So we want all of this intramuscular fat that's gonna make it tender and give it a lot of flavor. And then we also wanna separate out. Now, you could take a whole chuck roast and just throw it in the crock pot, but you would be missing out on being able to eat this delicious steak. So I personally, if I wanna make a big chuck roast for the family, I like to buy two. I like to pull off these chuck eye steaks, and then I want to cook these leftover pieces as well. Now, you could take this, which is, like I said, considered the Denver steak, and you could cut it into chunks this way, and you're gonna have like boneless short ribs, and you could braise them, or we could even cut this up and put it in our crock pot that way. But you really can maximize, like if you know what you're buying, you can get a lot out of it. Same thing, if you bought this like giant chuck roll from Costco or from a butcher, you could cut off all of the chuck roasts. You'd get some of these good steaks out of it. You could cut the Denver steaks. Like when you understand what the cut of meat is and where it comes from the cow, you then are able to find a way to, like, at a much more affordable price, maximize your budget there. So we're gonna separate this one also. Okay, I'm gonna set these two chuck eyes aside, and we are just going to, these are pretty thick. So again, you could very easily cut these in half and you'd have 4 chuck eye steaks to have throughout the week. And then I'm going to season the rest of this up, and we're gonna throw it in the crock pot. And today we are just literally gonna use salt. That's it. Very liberally put a bunch of salt on all sides of this. I like to keep seasoning when I'm doing a big piece of meat like this. At the beginning of the week, I like to keep the seasoning very simple, like I said, and just use salt. Obviously, depending on like what level of carnivore you are, you might want to just stop with salt. But this allows me to have kind of a blank canvas for the meat. And then as I reheat leftovers or cook it in a different way throughout the week, I'll add different seasonings to give me a lot of variety from this one big hunk. Now that it's all seasoned, I'm actually just gonna put a meter probe in each one of these so I can keep an eye on it while it's in my crock pot. I just really hate it when meat from a crock pot gets like overly cooked and ends up being kind of like dry and rubbery or soggy. And so this is just gonna help me to make sure that it's like cooked perfectly and I don't turn it into mush. At this point, you obviously could sear it in a cast iron skillet and give this meat like a really good crust on the outside and then put it in your crock pot or put it in a Dutch oven and cook it in the oven. I do not have time for that today. I have to get back to work. And so we are just gonna put it in sans searing. And I'm actually not gonna put any broth. I don't like when everything's just like mush in a crock pot. So we are gonna forego the broth, and I am just going to add a stick of butter because why not? It's gonna help with cooking its own juices, give a little bit of moisture, and it's gonna make some delicious gravy kind of at the bottom. But who doesn't love adding a stick of butter to anything? It's gonna make it really delicious. So I'm gonna put this in my crock pot. I'm gonna put it on high for the first hour, and then I'll turn it down to low. But like with any crock pot, you could just cook it on low the whole time or cook it on high if you were in a bigger hurry. And I'll keep an eye on how long this takes too. Okay, time lapse. It's been 8 hours. Let's check out how amazing this chuck roast looks. Look how much liquid is in here, first of all, and I started with no broth. I don't know why we put broth stuff in the beginning, but there is so much good fat and liquid in here. If you're not somebody that eats dinner, which I don't most of the time, like you could put this in at night before you go to bed and you could wake up to having like amazing chuck roast for dinner. I feel like chuck roast is one of those things that I love the first time and then I get sick of it instantly. So tonight we're gonna eat it plain, and then I'm gonna walk you through, look how good that looks. And I didn't even sear that, and you can see, oh, so good. Hang on, let's get you a better view. Look at that. I didn't even sear it and all that fat is rendered. And look at that. I'm not even gonna be able to lift it out. It's like falling. I think the only reason why it's holding together is because I still have my meter probes in there. Look at that. It even has a really good crust on it. My meter just completely fell out. I didn't even pull it out. That's how tender it is. Okay, I'm going to shred this up and then I'm gonna put it back in all of that good juice and fat and butter and like all of it. If you're trying to increase your fat intake, I can't eat just like ground beef with the drained fat on it. Like this is a much better option for me. Where'd my fork go? Hang on. This is a much better option for me, and I just personally am gonna digest this kind of fat so much better. So right out of the gate, we have a delicious meal, chuck roast in the crock pot, nothing revolutionary. I have some videos where I took a chuck roast and then we made cheese shells and I put some like taco seasonings on it and we had some tacos with the leftovers. 10 out of 10. We will absolutely be doing that with this. I also have another video where I took leftover chuck roast and we made breakfast tacos with eggs, which could or could not include cheese. So that's another option. The other thing that we can do is, which is what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna shred some of this up. And look, for some people, I'm aware, a lot of this fat is just not something that you are going to digest well or enjoy eating. Like some people are looking at this, my husband, and thinking that it looks like candy. He's just gonna eat all this fat. Some people, me, would take that off, which is not good because we're trying to eat some fat and we want fat for good hormones and good skin and all of the things. So I'm gonna take some of this meat and this fat and we are going to shred it up and we're gonna put it in the air fryer and get it crispy. This is the like Michaela Peterson, she calls it like crispy beef recipe, where we just take all of this beef and all of this fat and we get it nice and crispy and it's gonna have an entirely different texture. So shred this, put it back in the broth, and then we're gonna take some of it, throw it in the air fryer. This looks so good. If you were gonna serve this just plain for dinner, you obviously could put it with like a salad or a veggie for anybody that's low carb. That's how my kids would eat it. And then my husband and I would eat it with another meat on the side. And I would make it with something that's gonna be a little bit leaner just to balance out the richness. So I probably would have this with chicken, to be honest. Even like chicken legs or chicken drumsticks, but you could even go as far as having like boneless, skinless chicken thighs, or a pork chop would be good too. Something that's like a little leaner to balance out all of this good fat. Okay, look at all that fat and meat, and we're gonna put that in the air fryer at 400, and we'll see how long that takes. All right, look at that good crispy beef. That turned out pretty good. That was exactly 10 minutes. Obviously, if you were starting straight from cold, then it would take longer. But this is like an excellent way to use leftovers also. Sometimes what gets boring on carnivore, or monotonous at least, is just having the same texture all the time. And like, this is gonna be some like good crunchy pieces. I think Michaela would blast hers for even longer than this. So she has like literally crunchy pieces, almost like it turns into like dehydrated pieces. But for me, this like crunchy outside and soft chewy inside from the roast is the perfect consistency. And then look, all of those globby fat pieces are now these like crunchy, crispy on the outside. And they're still like maintaining that juicy fat. It's too hot right now, I can't bite it. But Look at the difference. I think just something simple. This is literally beef, salt, water, butter. I guess I threw butter in there, but you could skip the butter. I think that just adds a little more depth of flavor. That's so good. Imagine a bowl of this crispy beef with some like runny egg yolks on top mixed in. I love a runny egg yolk, but like, what do you dip in it? This would be so good dipped in it and have a little crunch. Look at that. Crunchy one right here. Crock pot, chuck roast, but crunchy. Who knew? So simple, delicious. Let me know if you try it. Thanks for watching.